Hello, world, and welcome to Intelligent Design Hoof Care. I'm your host, Casey LaPierre, and this is sponsored by the Institute of Applied Equine Podiatry. This is episode 4, and I think the title was What Goes Around. Well, it's a little bit more than that. We're going to be talking about the coronary band and coronary band functions, as it says here. Okay, we're going to get right into it. If you had looked at episode 3, you will have seen where we talked about the frog spine and how it affected the conformation of our digital cushion, and it had major responsibilities. Well, the coronary band is no different. It actually has some major responsibilities as well. Looking at this, we want to, let me just get rid of these. There we go. Okay, the coronary band, we have to ask some questions. Most people believe that its primary function is actually to produce the hoof wall. Okay, it does produce part of the hoof wall. It doesn't produce the whole hoof wall. It produces what we call stratum medium, or the tubules that you see as your outer hoof wall. Okay, and above the coronary band is another ring. We call it the periopal ring, or perioplic ring, and it actually produces periopal, which is what we call the stratum externum. Okay, and that's what you see as periopal in the top part of your foot. Okay, so let me just bring this up. Okay, so we have to ask some questions when we're talking about the coronary band. Do we really understand what its functions are? Okay, you can see here, does the coronary band conformation have influence over the position of P3? Okay, if you get a chance, I'd love you to read my book, Laminitis, Founder in Equine Digital Osteoarthritis, because in that book, I present new theories on suspension. Okay, currently the suspensory apparatus of the distal phalanx, or the coffin bone, is primarily, the responsibility for suspension is primarily given to the lamella. Well, in our new theories, we give that responsibility, or we assign that responsibility for suspension to the coronary band and the relationship it holds to its foundations. Because you see, the coronary band isn't simply a dermis, which is what we see on the screen right here. If we look on the screen right now, you can see the coronary band. You actually see the coronary band dermis. Now, the coronary band dermis is made up of what we call papillae, most finger-like, hair-like protrusions that you see at the coronary band. And at each one of those papillae, a tubule was produced, and you can see it in the hoof wall because the stratum medium actually has pigment. So if you look at the hoof wall below the coronary band there in the dorsal aspect, or in the front, in the toe, you'll see that there's pigment in the stratum medium. And in the area that we call the zone of matrix, the area where the hoof wall comes together to create a matrix, is just below the coronary band, and you can actually see it in this illustration. And it's the area that's covered with the periopal. Okay, so in that zone that is defined by the periopal, we see a matrix being formed. Okay, so that's the responsibility of our dermis to produce papillae so they can enter the matrix and actually matrix or blend with horn that's produced in our lamella. Okay, so that we're very well aware of what's going on there. That is one function of the coronary band, but a second actually a very important function of the coronary band is one of suspension. And it actually has to do with not only suspension of that foot in the capsule, but also circulation. Okay, we call it hemodynamic response. So in order to actually, talk to you about all of these various functions, I think we need to look at the anatomy. So I've done some dissections, and I've got some slides here. So I'm going to take this one off, okay? And I'm actually going to start by showing you some photographs of a dissection that was done. And there are a couple of things that I want you to take note. I want you to take note that above the coronary band, the foundation has a larger circumference than below the coronary band. Okay, that's important. Okay, the foundation for the coronary band is predominantly cartilage and not bone. In fact, about 20% only 20% of the foundation for the coronary band is actually bone. Okay, that's in the dorsal aspect. Okay, let's see what we can bring that up. There we go. Okay, so if you look on this illustration in the circle, you can see the anatomy and the conformation of the coronal groove, we call it, of the hoof capsule. Okay, and the coronary band resides in that groove. And in fact, there is actually 2 grooves in this foot, not just one. There's one in the hoof capsule. Okay, that groove that's within the circle. You see that groove. The second groove is actually the opposite direction, and it's made up by bone in that toe and made up by cartilage in the remainder of that foot. Okay, there's actually a groove that runs around the entire circumference of that foot. And we're going to show you that illustration in just a minute here. Okay, so this illustration shows you that groove as an illustration, but I'm actually going to show it to you from the dissection as well. So if you look to the toe, you can see that the foundation is bone, and we'll call that that anatomy or that configuration there is actually called the coffin joint pouch. It's made up of the extensor process of the coffin bone and the distal conformation of the short pastern bone, or P2. Okay, so because that presents a larger circumference, the coronary band cannot ride up over it if it's attached. Okay, but what's interesting is that the coronary band is not attached to bone or cartilage except for 2 small areas. Okay, and it's actually, it's quite amazing. We're just going to remove this for a minute. Okay, so just think about this coronary band. The coronary band itself, all right, we talked about the dermis. Okay, the dermis is vascular tissue. Okay, it has blood and nerves, and it actually the papillae actually cells proliferate around the papillae to produce our tubules. Okay, and in the peaks and valleys between, there are proteins that actually bind all these cells together. All right, so that's the dermis, but the dermis is actually very thin, and the conformation of that dermis, we've talked about conformation already. The papillae have a conformation, but they have no elastic potential. They really do not, they're not responsible for what you see as the conformation of your hoof. What's responsible as for the conformation of your hoof, we discussed in episode 1. The conformation of its foundations, which are host to the dermis, are actually responsible for the conformation of your hoof. Well, the coronary band itself is not symmetrical. Okay, in other words, it's wider at the toe. Let's go in here and just show this here. Okay, so it's wider at the toe, becomes narrower as we progressed into the quarter, and even narrower in the heels, and where we see the appendage. Okay, I'm going to show a little video that's going to show you the conformation of the appendages here. Okay, but what you can see is we have far more papillae at the toe than we do in the quarter and we do in the heel. And if you look at this illustration, I mean this photograph, you can actually see that we have different changing in ratios of our stratum medium to our stratum internum, because each one of those structures, whether it's the toe, whether it's the quarter, or whether it's the heel, have to perform in such a way that the ratio of horn, tubule to laminar derived horn, is very important. In our toe, you can see, because the coronary band is wider, there are more papillae there. Okay, so we have a higher ratio of tubules, we call those primary tubules, to that of our laminar derived horn, or our stratum internum. That's because the toe, we want it very rigid. Okay, around bone, we want stability. Okay, so it's perfect by design. The coronary band is wider. It's the host to the dermis. Therefore, we have more papillae. Therefore, we produce more tubules in ratio to that horn that's produced by our lamella, which is more pliable. Therefore, the toe has more rigidity to it. Okay, that's function. That's functional anatomy. As we progress into the quarters, we start to see a decrease in the number of papillae, but not a decrease in the number of lamella. Okay, so the ratio of horn to stratum internum to stratum medium is starting to change because we have to have more flexibility in the hoof wall. When we get to the heel, okay, the coronary band itself, which is a fibrocartilage band, okay, I don't even know if I mentioned that yet. It's a fibrocartilage band that plays host to the dermis. When we get to the heel or the appendage, there are very few papillae, but we have an increase in the number of lamella because it goes around the heel. We go around what we call the seat of the corn, and we go down our collateral grooves. Okay, so we have twice the number of lamella. And if you look at this photograph, you can see that we have twice the density of stratum internum in the heel than we do in the toe. Okay, it's kind of cool. Okay, so that's the dermis, and that's the function of the dermis. Okay, but that in order for that to be correct for each one of the structures, that coronary band has to have this very distinct conformation, wider at the toe, becoming narrower in the quarters until it's very narrow in the heel, and in the coronary band itself progresses down the collateral groove or is an attachment to the digital cushion. Okay, and I think I have some photographs to show that to you. So let's just remove this, and let me just bring this up, and let me just progress here. All right, let's go to here. Okay, so this is a photograph of the coronary band, and you can see where I'm holding it to the left. That is where it's wider than in the quarters, and the attachment to the digital cushion, or the digital cushion in the heels at the appendage, I have a little blow up there. Okay, and if you look at that arrow, that's the only place that the coronary band actually attaches to cartilage. It doesn't attach to bone. It doesn't attach to cartilage around the entire circumference of the hoof capsule, only in the appendage. Now, what holds it in place? That's the thing that we have to be aware of, as to what holds it in place. So this is the groove I talked about. Okay, there's a groove around the entire circumference of that hoof. And what I did was I removed the coronary band itself along with the digital cushion, which you just saw. Okay, so after removing it, that's what it was removed from that groove. Okay, all right. So what actually holds the coronary band in the groove so that we can suspend the foot in the capsule are not actually the lamella. Okay, the lamella, they are loose connective tissue. Okay, but their attachment, the dermal attachment of the frog, of the coronary band, is what provides that suspension. So if you look at this photograph, you'll see that the lamella dermis was attached to the coronary band dermis. And by taking a scalpel and just putting a slight incision across underneath or beneath the coronary band, it separates. No longer is there suspension of the coronary band within that groove. Okay, so we have attachment at the top and at the bottom. At the top, it's fascia. At the bottom, it's the dermis. Okay, so it actually provides a very strong attachment that can withstand about 1,000 kilos per square inch. I haven't done the conversion on that. We just talked about that in my alumni class. Okay, but that's about 2,500 pounds per square inch in a galloping horse that connection has to maintain stability, okay, or integrity. All right, it's just amazing, absolutely amazing. Now, what's here, what I have, the photograph that I have here is a photograph of the top part of the foot. And what I've done was I've shown how that the coronary band resides in that coronal groove around the entire circumference of the foot. Now, if you look to the bottom, you'll see two little red illustrations. Well, one of them is a cross-section of that coronary band, and it's actually showing the papillae. And because the coronal groove resides in that groove and has a foundation of bone, it can't move up or down. Whereas with the cartilage, okay, any changes in conformation to that coronal groove of the cartilage we can get upward and downward movement of the coronary band. You've all seen rises in the coronary band. You've seen, you've seen rises in the heels and so forth. That's what the blue arrows towards the back of that foot illustrate, that we can have changes in the conformation of that coronal groove, but those changes don't occur at the toe. What happens at the toe when we have changes in conformation to the back half of the foot, or the coronal groove of the caudal foot, is that that coronary band literally rotates in that groove. It can't move up because that's bone, but it can rotate, which changes the orientation or the of the papillae, which change the growth, changes the growth. So you've seen horses that they say, we've had rotation of P3. Okay, if you read my book, you'll see that I don't agree with that. It's not a rotation of P3 in chronic founded horses. We're not talking laminitis here. We're talking chronic founded horses. We're talking about changes in conformation of the caudal foot. Okay, so the cartilages change conformation, and what has to happen is the coronary band at the toe has to rotate slightly. And it doesn't take very much rotation to show up as a deviation in how the hoof wall grows. Okay, we've seen the angle change in the angles in the hoof wall. But that coronary band can also rotate around the circumference. In other words, it can shift in that groove so that we can have a hoof capsule that goes awry. Okay, so you know, if you've been a trimmer or a farrier for any amount of time, you can look down on a hoof and see how these tubules seem to be going awry. It's because the coronary band can shift within that groove. Okay, due to stresses and stimulus forces can alter the position of the coronary band within the groove itself. Okay, and that's what this illustrates. Okay. I wanted to bring it up because it actually shows how we have suspension of that coronary band within the groove. And for those of you that don't actually believe that the coronary band is not actually attached to cartilage and bone, I'm going to bring up the next photograph from a dissection to show you that actually what's behind the coronary band itself is actually a vascular bed. Okay, so we have the circumflex artery and vein, proximal circumflex artery and vein. We have a continuation of the coronary band plexus. All of that resides behind the coronary band within the groove, which has a foundation of cartilage and bone. Now, the only attachment we talked about was at the back at the appendage. So I'm just going to take this off. And I'm going to show a little video showing you conformation of an appendage. Okay, first in an underrun heel, underrun foot or underrun heels, and then in normal heels. And what I really want you to take note of is the conformation of the coronary band. And just remember that the only attachment is at the most palmar back part of that appendage. Okay. All right, so I'll take that off, and we're going to take a look at the conformation of the foundation for those feet. On this one, we can see that we have the appendage is elongated and the angle is very shallow.
Donc on va maintenant étudier la fondation du pied interne, la partie du pied interne, donc la fondation du talon. Et on voit sur celui-ci que l'arrière du cartilage ingulaire, qui sert de fondation, est extrêmement incliné vers l'avant.
Whereas this one here, we see a good definition of the appendage.
Alors que sur l'autre, on voit que l'appendice, donc c'est cette presqu'île qui termine l'arrière des cartilages ingulaires, a une forme mieux définie et un angle moins prononcé, et ce qui fait que les talons du pied blanc sont moins fuyants que les talons du pied noir.
Okay, so let me bring this back up again. Okay, so right back in that circle there, okay, it has an attachment to cartilage, but I want you to note something. It's actually very vascular. Okay, cartilage is an avascular structure, but it actually has a plexus that runs through it. Okay, so we have the ungular cartilage plexus there, and we have blood vessels running through the cartilage at those appendages. So a lot of what happens when we're looking at this foot is because it's so vascular, when we have movement of the heels like that, it's actually affecting hemodynamic response. Okay, so it's actually affecting circulation around the entire top circumference or proximal circumference of your hoof. Okay, so it has a lot to do with whether you get a good matrix, okay, whether you get good hoof wall growth or not. Okay, we've seen that when we get balance and we get the appendage where it's supposed to be, we get good conformation to our appendage and we allow it to distort correctly for respecting the design that it is. Because, I mean, you can't, how can you argue with this design? I mean, it's such a phenomenal design. So let me just take a look at here and see if there's some things that I want you to show you. Okay, so this is a PowerPoint that I had done for another webinar, but you can see the groove in the appendages there. Okay, and this is the coffin joint pouch. All right, so comparing one to the other, you can see that coronal groove. You can see how wide the coronary band is at the toe. So this is just a review. Okay. It actually is responsible for suspension. Okay. Our lamella, it is loose connective tissue. Yes, they do play a role, as does our solar aspect of the hoof, but primarily suspension in your capsule, of the foot in your capsule, is attributed to this design of a fibrocartilage band residing within a groove that has a foundation of bone and cartilage that allows for suspension of the foot within the capsule. Okay, it's just a phenomenal design. I mean, it's just perfect by design. Okay. All right. So that's about all I want to go over here. We're going to talk about some other things as we go along, but how important it is to correct balance is important to supporting lymphatic function and circulation. So you can just imagine now at the top of that hoof capsule, as those heels move, the tensions, the pressures, all on that vascular bed. Okay, so it has so much to do with correct circulation and lymphatic function. So everything works together. We talked about in episode 3, the frog spine, changing the conformation of the digital cushion. Okay, we talked about the foundations. In episode 2, we talked about the frog stay, which allows for the movement of the heels independently so that these appendages can work and create the correct stimulus around the coronal plane. Okay, we could get into Eastern medicine even, because we did a paper, we did a study at the Institute of Applied Equine Podiatry. One of my advanced level students, along with a veterinarian, did a study on the effects of balance on meridian function in the horse's foot. And you can find that on our website. Okay, so if you're interested in that type of information, you can go to our website and look up that article. All right, so let me just remove that. Okay, so that's about all I'm going to do this week. I do want to mention that each time we do an episode, we're actually building that foot from the inside out. Episode 1, foundations. Episode 2, the frog stay. Episode 3, our frog spine and digital cushion. Episode 4, now we're talking about the coronary band and how it's all starting to come together in that intelligent design, that perfect design, okay, that we call intelligent design. All right, and we have authored the suspension model of hoof dynamics based on respecting that design. Okay, so I hope you guys will visit our website, appliedequinepodiatry.org. You can find articles, for instance, the one on the Meridian study. You can find on the suspension model of hoof dynamics, the HPT method. There are a lot of different articles on there. I think there are almost 60 articles on there. Okay, and please, if you will, please remember, we need people to subscribe to our channel. Our YouTube channel is pretty simple. It's youtube.com/Casey LaPierre. Okay, and subscribe to Intelligent Design Hoof Care. Okay. You can find us on Facebook as well. Okay. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Applied Equine Podiatry. That's our school site, the Institute of Applied Equine Podiatry. You can also go on to several of our groups. Okay. Applied Equine Podiatry Advice. You can post questions, and you can see things posted there as well. All right. Well, that's it this week. Okay. Then this is episode 4. The coronary band. Okay. What goes around comes around. All right. So I hope you enjoyed it. Okay. Everybody stay safe, enjoy, and God bless.
Imagine doing what you love. Horses and hoof care. Experience one-on-one learning, taught by a master applied equine podiatrist with over 40 years of experience. Start earning your diploma today. Learn to trim your own horses, or follow your passion and start a new career. Enroll in a course today.